Obviously, no reply from Charlie Crozier. Because he said he yeah, so okay. So
leave it as it is on the things, or we'll just move it down.
Okay. Right, good evening everyone. Sorry, Chris. Right, good evening everyone. Welcome to this meeting of Brickhill Parish Council. Apologies for being late. So first of all, can I take apologies for absence?
We've got Charlie, we've got Colin, and we have, that's it. Anybody else?
Right.
Catherine.
No other apologies there?
Catherine yet? No.
Okay, so we know those apologies.
Yes.
Item number 2, are there any declarations of interest in items on the agenda?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Item number 3, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of March, which have been circulated. Are there an accurate record of the meeting?
Yeah.
Sign those. Okay, now Wendy needs to dash off because of the Lent stuff, so I'm going to suggest bringing forward the reports from Borough Councillors. I've not had confirmation from Charlie Crozier that he's going to be turning up to this meeting. He said he wanted to come along, so we scheduled it on the agenda. But can we bring item 8 forward now? And I know there's been reports from the Brickhill Borough Councillors being circulated. Is there one from Great Barton Borough Council?
Yes. It may have come out after I left the office, but if it has, what I'll do is send it out.
It has been sent out.
Yeah. I sent out yours this morning.
Stephen's earlier.
Yeah. Oh, maybe it's gone.
No? Oh.
I'll set the other.
You're imagining things again.
We don't
maybe
know
that's
what
Around the last month's report.
Maybe.
Perhaps it's the last one. Perhaps it's the last one.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I haven't sent it out.
So when the Charlie's report's been circulated, Steve and Charles will be circulated when it's received.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any? Do you want to make any more comments to your report, Wendy?
No, I'm ready to add to it.
Any questions for Wendy on behalf of Wendy and Charlie?
He's saying no.
All happy? Stephen, anything else?
The only point I would draw attention to is that I seek to allay too many fears, which seem to me to be still to be extant about the East-West Rail on any analysis, and certainly engineering analysis, is that you've got to live on Sunderland Hill to be more concerned. I mean, it's not going to come this side of the hilltop, the Graze Hill line. So the chances of it being seen, possibly heard, but seen by Brickhill residents, Woodlands Park residents, I think are vanishingly small.
I don't think they're going to have it though within Brickhill itself. I mean, on the map which they circulated with the parish council, the councillors who went to the workshop, they did show the very end of Brickhill Parish potentially being, but that's the far end.
That's the Clapham end.
And the very top end
Clapham corner,
fields beyond the country park. Yeah. But that's just within the route corridor rather than the. So I guess we just have to wait and see.
Sometime around the end of the year.
Which year?
We will know which of the lines, and then there'll be a fight about where within the swathe of land it will fall.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Any questions for Stephen? Okay. Well, Stephen, Wendy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, public open session. No member of the public. So we move on to item 6, the financial matters, to consider and agree action on the following: to approve bank reconciliations and any capital payment. They've been circulated. All happy to approve that. Item 6.2, to note that Cathrine Ward has audited the accounts for 2018-19.
Yeah, and I'd like to sign the sheets for the audit. Pass it round actually.
Catherine, thank you very much for doing that. Item number 6.3, to consider the purchase of 20 Smartwater kits for reselling. This is something I put forward. Basically, we have previously bought kits. We didn't sell them all, but we managed to sell some. This is this amazing special DNA water stuff that basically you can put on any of your high value items, and if the police find it, it can be checked, and it can be linked back to your own property, because it's your particular property. You know, it's specific to you, formulated for one, on a one-off basis, each unit. As a parish council in Woodlands Park, the benefit of us doing it was that the residents who bought the kit from us did not have to pay for renewal fees because the registration, if you buy as an individual, has to be renewed periodically. As buying it through a parish council, you did not have to do that. And coming back to the conversations which have taken place around antisocial, well, not so much antisocial behaviour, but crime within Brickhill, the feedback we had from the police at the priority setting meeting was that there's roughly one burglary every 3 days within Brickhill. And though that's mostly caused by drug-related behaviour, at the end of the day it manifests itself as burglaries. So the logic I had was, so what can we do about that? And I thought, well, maybe if we can try and encourage people to mark their property, it will at least help in the event of burglaries and items can be recovered.
I should say there's one in every group or something. I think it might be.
Yeah. Okay. So it was just a proposition to see whether something we can do as a parish to help our residents deter and, if you like, help catch burglars after the event.
How much do they cost?
Have you got the information?
Not yet, because they're due to send it through, but they're not terribly expensive, because I remember seeing the invoice last time before my time. It's probably about £5 a kit, I think.
It wasn't much. I mean, we just about covered. We aimed to cover the cost of it without trying to make money out of it. But
not too different again. I think it's like 99 or something.
In the absence of the cost, do we need to defer it?
Well, you can. The plan is to recoup the money, isn't it? And I'm fairly sure of 20, you will get 20 people buy those, even if you're only talking about people locally. It's up to you then.
Well,
I think they're £5.99 each. They were about £5.10 each, something last time. So if you've done 20 of them.
Right. Questions? Comments?
Can we approve the budget and let you go by them? Is that?
We say maximum 100 or 200, or do you think it's?
Well, I think it was I think they're £5.99 each. It says £6, so it's £120 for 20, isn't it?
150 just in case there's a bit of headroom.
Yeah.
We're happy with 150.
Yeah.
Great. Item number 7, to receive an update on Woodlands Park and bring further action. Thank you, Chris, for circulating your report.
Okay, thank you. The biggest ones are we're still not making any progress on the money we've got allocated for projects within Woodlands. We individually, as councillors, we've tried, individual residents have tried contacting Persimmon. As a parish council, we've tried contacting Persimmon and asking for permission trying to open a dialogue, and we've so far not met with much at all. So I'm proposing a motion that we ask for the Borough Council to try and facilitate a meeting and start that dialogue with Persimmon. I accept that the Borough officers are suggesting that legals is in play at the moment, and it's likely to progress through adoption. But we have had this promise for the last 4 years. We haven't really adopted anything new, probably in the last 2.5, 3 years. So the first item is a motion to request Borough Council support with opening up a dialogue with Persimmon.
Okay, any questions on that? I mean, I'm very happy to support that, in that it's it's a difficult situation, isn't it? Because there's been such a protracted process, and they've been so unresponsive to any requests, it seems. So you and I have both seen the email from Paul Pace at the Borough, who says that the legal teams are currently engaged and will be simply moving forward at long last on the adoption. But as you say, we have been there before with those sort of similar comments, really. And I do feel as if we have got money, it's burning a hole in our collective pockets. We've got the money from Ravensden, and we've got the money also from BPHA, which we need to spend. So the more if we can get, even if they can't, or if they haven't been able to finalise the adoption, at least we can get permission to put some of the things in that we've previously identified.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm very happy to support that. Any other questions or comments on that?
Can I just ask a question? It's not on your list. We spoke last time about the damaged items in the Owl Park.
We did. Now, you sent an email, didn't you?
Yeah, and I thought I'd circulated, but maybe I sent it back to you.
I've certainly seen the response. Essentially, the response is that there will be another request for sooner, is my understanding, from Paul.
No, I think Sue sent it to me and Chris only.
Yeah, I think initially, because it was only today I think I got it, or yesterday, but in essence what he said is that the boroughs get their play inspectors to go and have a look, and on their basis of their report back, they will contact the president, but if they come back and say nothing, then they will get it repaired, the borough, and they will recharge, which makes sense, really.
Yeah.
So the concern I have with that is it was a bit of an indefinite timescale, and I'm of the opinion that certainly the issue with the larger slide, with the drop and the missing handrail.
Children were there again at the weekend, and now we're on school holidays next week, and I just think it's an accident waiting to happen.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
Shall I
we've got
go
a
back to
proposition.
Maria?
Got a proposition, I've seconded it. Can we take a vote on that? Can we see those in favour, please?
So shall I now go back to Paul Pace and say it's urgent, really, certainly the large slide,
Yeah.
and something needs to be done quite quickly now. School
Well, if it was borough owned or owned by us, and it was dangerous, then what would we do? We would close it off.
Yeah.
You know?
And then one now in the weekend.
Yeah.
And the kids think it's a joke just to go off the edge, and it's so much
It's going to be difficult to close it off, isn't it?
It is because of the way it's built, but you'd have to fence the whole mound.
Okay.
So very quickly, a little bit on Graze Hill. If you don't mind, Chair, I will deal with most of the things we've got to say about Graze Hill in the item on the Graze Hill development. We have got a local meeting at Moresbury Golf Club on the 12th of April at 7, just to try and get a consensus of opinion from residents, just so that we have a list of things that we like and a list of things we don't like, and we can go back in a reasonably unified, constructive way. It's all about trying to keep that dialogue open with the developer. Again, east-west rail extension, accepting what you said, Stephen, regarding visual disturbance. I think people are also concerned about any noise disturbance, particularly from any freight services on an evening. CPRE Bedfordshire are going to come along to the Moresby event on the 12th of April, just to have a chat with people and answer any questions as best they can. So, related to the first item on permission to install the Ravensden Fund objects, we've got a number of items that are sat on the snagging list for quite a while, chiefly lighting. It's just not been addressed. There's one or two issues where we need to have a conversation with borough officers and just clarify a few points there. So what I've done is I've asked for Paul and Claire to organise a meeting, ideally with Persimmon, so we could just go through that list locally and try and just explain why we think these issues need resolving and what the impact is on residents. And then the final issue is we've had a couple of clustered incidents of antisocial behaviour on Crispin, Sturmer, Egmont, around that loop. There was quite a bit of criminal damage done. The residents in that area, multiple residents have raised concerns. They are of the belief that it's highly likely, that it's targeted and it's highly likely to happen again. So they are requesting, or they are asking whether there's any temporary CCTV available, just for a short period in that area, just to try and capture any ongoing incidents there.
So, Stephen, do you have a camera that could be used for that purpose?
No, the council does have. So you've got a question making sure it's clear and seeing if they'll adapt it to these purposes.
Would it be suitable for that type of location, because it's, you know, as opposed to not for traffic use? Because, you know,
They have a mobile.
It would be no less suitable than the ones that are mounted in 2 positions on camera posts on Woodlands already. So
I can certainly make that request. It's a request I've made for in other parts of the ward.
so if we can, if the borough has one which we could buy, can be installed temporarily, if that will help, then absolutely.
yes, certainly the residents.
So yeah, is there a place where it can be fitted then? Do you know, if there's a power supply and those sort of things? Or?
It would be the same sort of arrangement. It would be a lamppost mounted.
Right.
Yeah, and there are some overlooking the potentially affected properties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Presumably we'll give Steve the necessary information.
There are inevitably issues arising out of looking into windows and all sorts of things. So it's quite a complex matter of getting the agreement, because you have to pixelate out certain things they can see.
Okay, anything else, Chris?
And finally, I'd like to thank all of the Borough Councillors for their support over the last 4 years. It's been great. We, as a parish council, we would struggle without the support of Borough Councillors. So I'd just like to thank Wendy and Charlie and Stephen and Cheryl, particularly given Cheryl stepping down. I'd just like, it's a shame she's not here for us to pass on our thanks personally, but I would hope you would convey that on our behalf, Stephen. And that's all I've got.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Any questions for Chris? Any questions for Chris? No? The only thing I'll say, Chris, just to clarify, of the things still on the list of items that we were looking to spend money on, obviously one of the items was around the gates, so-called gates in the perimeter fencing, one of which is the Egmont Crispin sort of on the bed, not call it a bed, on the junction, that's not obviously affected by any potential connection to the Graze Hill side of things. It'd be really nice to get that done, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
So I just wondered, some of the things to me should be more straightforward to get agreed to do than others.
Well, the easier ones are things like litter bins, dog bins, benches. People are not going to object to more of that. We get a lot of questions. So they're all fairly low risk. A few more play items in the parks.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much, Chris, for that report. So we'll move on to item 9. To consider the application for the land at Graze Hill, Ravensden. It's an outline application for up to 200 dwellings with all matters reserved except access and green always get mixed up between what that actually means in practice. When it says these items are reserved but not accessed, that isn't reserved. So if you look on the website, there's it mentions that particular issue, right? But there are 7 things which are 7 different aspects which are constraints. That's quite the same as reserve matters. Do you understand that? You know what that means in practice? Right. So anyway, sorry, Michael. Do you want to talk about this item, Chris, at all?
Yeah, well, I'll just quickly run through a couple of the issues that residents are raising as concerns. Obviously, firstly, social housing, potentially 60 of the 200 are social housing. Fantastic, great to see. Residents are welcoming that. Residents are a little bit confused and concerned about the increase from January 2018 from 100 properties in the local plan of what was previously consulted, creeping up now to 200 dwellings. Again, looking at the site plans and the clustering of the properties in the bottom corner of the site, and acknowledging the fact that the landowner owns all of the field next to it, the likelihood really of it stopping at 200 seems unlikely. Well, residents are looking for confirmation that it will 200 will be the limit. The presentation that they did here at the beginning of this year had some very large suds at the bottom to absorb any surface water runoff. And in the later plans, they've all but disappeared. Sorry, my printout didn't work as well as I thought. It looks like the rainwater runoff is managed to the bottom corner of the site, towards the, in terms of Woodlands Park, towards Pomeroy end, rather than Egremont, to 2 suds there. The suds themselves drain into the brook if they overflow. So obviously residents are very concerned about the risk of flooding in either direction. And it is mentioned in the plan. The blue is risk of flooding, the red line is the boundary between the potential development and the greenway along the edge of Woodlands Park. So they acknowledge that there is potential there if not managed properly. The access road and particularly lighting at the top of the hill is concerning some residents. It'll be very, very visible, very obvious. It needs to be very carefully designed, very sympathetically designed. And then one of the other issues is around access across to local shops, schools, community facilities across Woodlands Park. It'll be the predominant cycle and pedestrian route, so residents want to see that managed carefully. And then obviously the lack of local shops, schools, facilities within the new development is raising quite a few questions. People either really love the idea of a shop or they hate it. So I'm sorry to wrap through it, speed.
That's fine. Anything else, Chris?
That's everything that we've.
So, I'm up for comments. I know Tim sent some emails round. Do you want to talk to your emails, Tim?
I will. Thank you. So my gut reaction when this first came to the Parish Council was that the Graze Hill site is a long way from any amenities, and following the planning application actually going in, I've actually checked just how far that site is on foot from the local primary schools and the local secondary schools. Obviously Thomas More is quite close, but with that being a Catholic school, I imagine some people would want to go to Mark Rutherford. And both Scotland, Brickhill Primary and Mark Rutherford are a good, I think it's 38 minutes on foot to Mark Rutherford. It's about 3 kilometres, and more than 2 kilometres, I think, to Scott Primary. Now there are some national guidelines which they are actually quoting themselves in the planning material, that the maximum the maximum walking distance to places should be 2 kilometres. And this ties into how the planning application is attempting to rely on the national planning framework to justify putting in 200 houses instead of 100. So because I think they're very clever. I think they're putting in the application as early as they can. So it's before the local plan has gone through, and they've got some arguments in their documentation about why we should be judging it on the national rules instead of the local rules, which are agreed. And they're trying to cherry pick. They're trying to, because they have to pay attention. They still have to pay attention to local plans which are in progress, but they're cherry picking the bits that they can comply with, and then ignoring this bit about the number of houses that are in there. Now, they're relying heavily on, I've got it here, MPPF 122, so it's part of the national planning framework that requires developments to make optimum use of land. But the bit that they didn't quote in their documents was that that you have to regard the availability and capacity of infrastructure and services, both existing and proposed, as well as their potential for further improvement, and the scope to promote sustainable travel modes that limit future car use. Now, in their documents where they consider their travel plan, they give a nod towards these national limits of 2 kilometres, but they don't actually spell out where people will want to walk to. So all they've said is there are footpaths that connect over to Woodlands Park, but they don't tell you where you're going to actually go after that. So yes, you can get to your friend's house over on Woodlands Park, but you can't actually get to his primary school, you can't get to a secondary school, you can't get to the shops to buy a pint of milk unless you're prepared to walk a 40-minute round trip, which is ridiculous. It's absurd, and I think we should, in our response to this planning application, which I hope will be putting in, I think we should be noting these points and challenging their reliance on these national rules, which I don't think they're quite following to the letter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to comment on this?
So in terms of the site being sustainable, they keep quoting that it's easy to get to the schools, easy to get to the shops, etc., etc. And they claim that the distance is a certain figure, but when I look at the map myself, it's almost 50% higher than what they say, and all they've done is as the crow flies, not exactly how you would actually walk. So when you say it's only 900 metres to Thomas More School, it's probably about 1.5 metres as a crow flies, but if you're actually zigzagging along all the paths, it's probably double that. And then reiterating how sustainable it is, but then in the transport breakdown, they are, in the transport assessment, they are quoting that 76% of the households would actually drive, and 2% I think would go by bike, and 5% would walk, as it's not a sustainable system if 75–76% have to use a car, and they're quoting that every one of the households would have a car, so that is up to 200 journeys to and from the estate at almost a minimum every day, which would tie up Kimbolton Road congestion even more than it is now.
It just seems now that all the estates, and if you look down North Road, how many estates we've got down here now? 3 or 4. None of them have got shops, none of them have got facilities. Where those children go to school, they have to walk. Seems to be the same everywhere now. These new estates they build, they don't build any infrastructure, anything, and I agree. And regarding Mark Rutherford, there are a lot of children who come from quite a distance. They're not local children. They're coming, they're coming from Borough, they're coming from other places. So, the fact that up there, the distance children are travelling. I mean, you know yourself, around Brickhill in the morning, there's more cars than there are pedestrians all the time. It seems to be the fact now, and I don't know why they're allowed to build these estates without there's something. I mean, there's no bus routes, there's no something. But it happens.
Sorry. Morris Thompson.
Do we know of these 200 homes, how many are 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, and how many flats?
I think there is some indication. They say that certainly there won't be any high-rise buildings, so possibly no flats. Majority will be 2-storey, with 1 or 2 focal ones, 2.5 stories in the central low area. They do say that all the houses will be below the 50-metre contour line, which is level with all the houses in Woodlands Park.
So just backing up your point of sustainable travel, Peter, and again echoing what you're saying, Tim, the proposed bus stop at the top of the hill in the vicinity of the roundabout, there's a lot of snaking paths up from the development, which is in the bottom half of the field in effect, that snake up and put you out on the B660 in the vicinity of where the bus stops are. Great if you're able-bodied, but that's quite a steep climb, even with snaking paths.
Yeah, I was going to make that point. I personally can't see a single person walking, even if they're fit, walking all that distance up to the roundabout to catch a bus at that point. And I think it does say in one of the documents that only fit people would go that way. So they admit it themselves, but I can't see many fit people walking that distance up to those bus stops number 28.
Anyone else want to comment?
I have to go because I'm planning, so I can't.
Yeah. I mean, basically, when we had that presentation earlier in the year, we made some comments then about it in general terms. And I think those comments probably still apply now, about access into between the new development and Woodlands Park, to make sure they're not cut off and took in isolation. On top of that, I'm reading through they've got this the landscape and visual appraisal document, which is on the Borough website, and I'm a bit worried about, and it touches on your point, Chris, about the SUDS, the drainage system, in that landscape visual appraisal document refers to the Highfield Farm Bowl. There is, if you look at it, there is an element that it looks like a catchment area, which obviously drains down through that through the brook. And essentially, there must be some degree of risk that in the event of a localised, downpour in that catchment area, that you will get a lot of water coming down. I mean, there's been similar things in the past around Stagston, I believe, going back quite some years, which then impacted the Stag into Bromham and causing local flooding. So I appreciate the slugs is primarily to capture water from the site rather than from. But if it's then drained into the brook anyway, it's going to the whole thing almost got hang together. So I think I'm particularly worried about the drainage. The other thing is around the gradient of the access road. Because if they're looking to take it up the hill, does that mean that it would be of such a gradient that it would require gritting in the winter? So, and given the nature of the borough's approach to gritting, they don't necessarily want to take on even more roads to have to spend money on grit throughout the winter through the when it's cold. So there is a risk element around causing deliberately building something which is going to be dangerous for the drivers and presumably everybody 10 miles in their vicinity.
So yes, just to echo that, there's obviously the risk of flooding from the brook into the sort of the other way. You're wholly relying on the brook as your secondary line of defence there. We have seen that blocked. It was somebody pushed something into it that they shouldn't, however, you wouldn't want to find that when people start flooding. The other concern I have is echoing that point about the Highfield Farm Ball. So Woodlands Park is surrounded on almost 3 sides by high hills. So the existing Woodlands Park connects to the sewerage line that goes up to Twinwoods. So all the effluent from Twinwoods comes down through Woodlands Park into the chapter at Brickhill. And we have had, not recently admittedly, but we have had a couple of instances where people have put stuff down the drains either at Twinwoods and it all been gravity fed, settles out on the flat bit, which happens to be Crispin Drive, and we have had it blow manhole covers off. If we've got another 200 properties worth of gravity fed goodness coming back down and converging on that drain system on Crispin or connecting it closely into it, it's only a matter of time before it being the flattest point on all of those gradients, it's all going to collect and settle there.
I think when we talked about it last time, or maybe originally, the concept of 100 houses sounded like, are we okay with 100? If the benefit was we get extra country park around it, but then if they're pushing for 200, 220, whatever the number might be, it's going to be a significant increase in number. Plus there is the risk, as I think you alluded to, Chris, that the developer, the owner, the landowner, has the field next door. And yes, in their original application to the call for sites, there was a proposition for 500 houses along there. So there's nothing to say, you get this one done, and then something else will come along a year or 2 later. I think we fundamentally need to agree, are we happy with the proposition or not? As it stands, I presume. We can't just say to them, we would have been okay with 100, but we're not okay with 200. Yeah, we need to. I presume we just need to say straightforwardly.
I'm not quite sure how the examination of the local plan comes into this, because it is one of the agenda items, this particular site.
So again, Stephen may want to comment, but my understanding of the situation is that the local plan examination starts in May and goes through to June. If the independent examiner decides that the plan is fine, then the numbers will be, all the numbers for the different sites would be baked in, and these developers who are pushing, and not just here, but it's, as you were aware, in Great Barford and other places, they're pushing to jump the gun, and they're trying to say, oh, you don't have enough sites identified now, but actually, if that plan is adopted as it is laid out, then suddenly, magically, they will have the right number of sites, as I understand it. So I don't think we should be pressured into agreeing for 200. There's no reason we should go down that road.
But the local plan is still 100.
Yeah, yeah. That's, sorry, Tim.
But my point on that is that even under the national framework, even if the borough officers accept that we should, that they should decide it under the national planning book, I think we've got some arguments that can challenge it on those grounds to say actually 200 is too much.
Yeah.
And these are the reasons. It's the sustainable travel that they're not meeting their own their own guidelines that they're trying to follow.
Okay. Can we try and sum up then? Because we need to come up with a recommendation.
Chair, can I just ask, are you intending as a parish council to speak in front of the inspectors?
At the local plan?
Yeah.
We haven't agreed anything on those lines, actually.
Again, there are the dual lines of attack. I mean, there's both attacking it on the planning, on the local plan. So it's right to say it is one of the sites that's identified as a particular topic.
Good point. Perhaps can we deal with this application and then sort of talk about the local plan item next? So can we agree a response then? Or a submission to the Borough Council for this application?
Could I make a suggestion? Because we're using Tim's references, could we not use that as part of our submission in terms of letting them know that we also have read and we are also referencing to the same source they are, and just highlighting the issues and the way Tim is done it, rather than trying to start something afresh, but just using your work.
So you need, obviously you'll be submitting it on behalf of the parish. So do you have if we're referencing Tim's comments on the local national planning framework?
Well, can I make a suggestion? Tim sends me that, which is the easiest. I can then cut and paste that in.
Yeah.
Because obviously I've taken notes, but that would be sensible. Similarly, Chris sends his bits and pieces to me, and that we merge the whole lot together, and I then quickly send it out to you all to see. And make sure that I've covered everything.
Chair, could I ask the lighting implications and the night landscaping implications are taken into account? Because the road's snaking up the hill,
yes,
and the lighting that would be necessary for a roundabout on that road. There's no way that's not going to be a very prominent feature, covering visible from the whole of parish and indeed the whole of Bedford.
Okay. So you've got noted the various comments made. The other thing just to throw in, and it ties in actually with your comment, particularly Chris, about drainage. At the meeting at Ravensden Parish Council when this was discussed, one of the residents there talked about the problem with the bridge under the Kimbolton Road, where he says in the past that is actually blocked. So that bridge itself is basically, look at it, it's basically a big pipe, and that he was querying whether that would be sufficient to accommodate faster runoff, which is obviously downstream further from Woodlands Park itself, but it's all relevant. So fundamentally though, are we saying we do not agree with this proposition? We are against the idea of 200 houses on that site?
Yeah, I think we have to object to the planning application rather than just commenting.
Yes. So are we all happy then to object?
Are we putting the proposal to the vote?
I'm just looking to the mood of the meeting in a minute, so happy to take that as a vote. If we want to take a vote on that, we're happy to. Can you see those in favour of objecting, please? And that's unanimous. Thank you.
So I will use these points and whatever else I've picked up, I'll circulate that around you all, and those people can add in extra bits and pieces as you need.
So,
Date is final date for the week's time.
Yes, but I'm going to see that you can't ask for slight extensions of that, even though it's in an adjacent parish.
Date is 23rd of April.
So we've got time.
So, Chris.
So I was going to say, in that submission, that objection, can we make it clear what we object to? and also make it clear we are very, very willing to enter into dialogue with the developers, the landowners, to try and get something that works for Brickhill, for Woodlands Park, for Graze Hill, for Ravensden.
So, coming back to the point about the local plan examination, so Stephen suggested that, or we asked the question, are we going to be represented there to state our views? I think that's a good idea. So, can we formally agree to do so? I haven't looked at the precise details of how we need to go about that process. I'm aware that I think you have to write in to notify.
You have to notify you're interested, and you're certainly eligible. It's only open to those who submitted in the first place, which of course you did. Yeah. So you're eligible to request. There's no guarantee you'll get in front of them.
No.
But given this specific nature of the way the agenda is broken down, and the fact this is one of the specific topic for consideration, I thought you had to lock us as a parish council.
Yeah. Okay. So is everyone happy with that we do so? I say towards the back end of it's in two separate periods.
There's three tranches of hearings.
Okay. The last thing, just to touch on your comment, Chris, about working together, etc. At the last Town and Parish Council Network meeting, which I gave a little presentation about Brickhill and the history of it, and all I was asked to talk about problems actually. So I talked about Woodlands Park, and, from a planning perspective. And this touched a bit of a raw nerve with quite a few people from other parishes in different parts of the borough, Grey Denham and Stuartby and various other places. And there was actually a suggestion and John, who's chair of Stuartby, he's very keen on this as well. They are looking to basically gather together councillors from different parishes who have this experience of painful experience of working with developers or not working with developers. To see what can we learn from this and how can we better, deal with it in the future. Because I feel as if every single parish is under this sort of pressure, and everyone is suffering the pain. And so we need to learn how should we best achieve, results for our residents, type of thing. So there'll be, I think, after elections there'll be some meetings scheduled, and we'll be, asked to contribute to that. And I think one of the points about that, though, is trying to confirm the best way, essentially it's down the best way that parishes should engage with developers. So we'll come on to that again at a future date.
Can I just say, having read that, we need to be a little bit mindful that it's not all doom and gloom. I felt it was I appreciate you had limited.
But I
saw it. I felt it was a little bit pessimistic. Could have done with a bit more balance.
Well, I was asked about the problems. I wasn't asked to talk about the nice things.
No, but it sounds like there's just problems and nothing else.
Oh, it's enjoying nice people up there. It's good sense. Yeah. So, but it really was. It was quite amusing actually, because as I say, it did touch a raw nerve with quite a few people from across the other parishes as well, which I hadn't quite expected.
In what respect?
Well, because other people are having the same problem of having difficulties with developers. But I think there's definitely things we can learn from each other.
I was going to say, Milton Keynes, I used to be clerk to Kenton and Lumsden, and even now, 20 years on, some of those houses that I used to be involved in are still not adopted, the land around them. We're 20 years on, there's issues still, so I don't want to depress you, but Milton Keynes have got the same problems.
Alright, so I think we're done with item 9. Everyone happy with that? Thank you. So move on to item 10. It's got to be worked on by Community Payback.
Lovely. They've been in twice, 20th of March and again this last Wednesday, working on Waveney Green. They've done all the benches, they look very good, including the Palmer's bench, which is the one we'd agreed to maintain. They've also made a very good job of the memorial garden. And they generated a very large pile of green bags. I took a car full, and that's why I circulated an email so people could take that one bag and dispose of it amongst their household green waste. That would get rid of it all. So hopefully hopefully we can persuade people to do that. So I think that's the end of the work that they're going to do for now. I've obviously told Frank, who organises it, about the money that the Parish Council is happy to contribute. I've not had anything back, so we wait and see what it comes back with. But they've done a very good job.
So we've still got lots of things they could do around the wildflower meadow, for instance.
Well, you know it's all been ploughed up.
Oh, I haven't seen it. No.
Yes, it has. It's been rotivated, and Chris Holland's done that. He's also reseeded it. I think what we need to do is really keep a bit of a monitoring on it this year. See, last year for various reasons that didn't happen. Whether it's as a group of parish councillors, perhaps who live nearby, perhaps go over there, can keep their eye on it. I think we just need to make sure that we don't let it get overgrown and full of weeds. And what he did say is with the thistles, that although people are worried about that, if you dig them out while they're quite freshly grown, or they're quite new, you can dig out quite a lot of those out. So that might be something that we do, and perhaps get Community Payback in to do that. So
it all worked out okay though?
Well, it looks fine now. It's all chopped up. It's brilliant.
Fantastic.
Right.
Any questions on this?
Talking about the green bags, can't you get the waste collectors to do it on their ground?
Yeah, I think my understanding is last time we tried that, we will be charged because this is not just normal waste. And if it's done as part of a litter pick, then they're usually fine. When you've done it as part of a project, they charge you. So that's why I thought I would take some and persuade people to see what we've got left, really. I could always then go back to Borough and ask them if they could consider taking the last few.
How many bags are there?
Well, there were 30 odd. I took a good 10 in my boot.
I'll take it.
But I thought if people could take just one along somewhere over the weekend and put it with their garden waste, perhaps we'd get rid of the other. I don't know.
I'll take it.
Yeah, so you can have a look.
Great.
But there were a big stack of them.
Yeah. Anything else on this item?
No, that's it.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you for doing that. Item 11, to consider the complaint from Highfield House and Green any action. So we've had another email from the resident. This is not the first time we've had a if you like, complaint, either directly or indirectly. I did reply previously saying to the chair of Ravensden Parish Council that essentially this is not something that we can resolve ourselves. And I said along the lines of, like the most recent review we've had, where literally one person moved into Brickhill and several other people moved out of Brickhill, but even for that, we ended up with a full-blown review for the entire area. So as I understand it, even for one blade of grass to move, you'd have to have a certain percentage of people from both sides of that blade of grass would have to agree for the translocation. And I have to say, I persist in delivering them the copy of Brickhill News every time it comes out, because my view is every person in the parish council, in the parish area, should have their copy. So that probably, every time I deliver it, that probably winds them up every time.
It does, yes.
Yeah, so I can only apologise for that, but it's still, it's what can I say? Tim, you again were obviously you had too much time in your hands since you did some further digging. Do you want to comment on your investigations?
I've not spoken to the residents directly. I looked into it because I had too much time, and it seems to me that the whole of the polling district, including that Woodlands Park was moved, and they're in that polling district, and so that is why we ended up with the boundaries that we did. This was actually before my time. This would have been with the Ravensden CGR, and there's no quick solution, and it's a shame. I think that we're not likely to see another community governance review for at least 5 years, possibly, from the Ravensden side, if the guidelines are followed. And at that point, it would be up to them to comment on the consultation.
So we're saying that most parishes in the borough have not had a community governance review in living memory. It's only been a limited number of reviews taking place across, Brickhill, Wixham's, Carlington, Great Denham, I think maybe they've had one. But there's very, very few, in fact. So, yeah. Did you comment, Chris, about if and when Graze Hill happens, there is a possibility another review could take place? But as I've also previously said, having gone through two, I've actually no wish to go through to actually play an active part, if you like, in another one, because it's the most amazing way of eating up time for, if you like, limited benefit.
It's quite true you'll feel different maybe Grace Hill.
No, I doubt it. But
Chair, I would be interested to know if we have spoken to the residents concerned directly and whether there's anything we can do to limit, to help them feel less a part of Brickhill, such as opting them out of the parish newsletter, or whatever, or supporting the change to the polling districts when there's a review, so that they don't have to vote at Underneath Court or something like that.
I have spoken to them previously, and I know they do receive both the Brickhill and Ravensden Parish newsletters. Ravensden only do one a year, and we do 5, so, sorry. What I'm going to say, I suggest basically you write back along the lines of explaining the legal situation. We understand their comments, but it's not something we have control over. And it's worth just sorry?
Are we signposting them to the borough?
How can we do that?
What's that bit? I can't even love it.
Signposting them to the borough, telling them about it, pointing towards the relevant people at the Borough Council.
Yeah.
And quite right, the parish can't just decide to take on extra land on its own. No, we can't. So we have no, that's not in our gift. Is everyone happy with that response? So we'll write back to the complainant, we'll copy that to Bedford Parish Council itself, and refer them to the Borough Council, to the appropriate people in the Borough Council. Thank you. So now we've got some various policies and stuff to look at. Sue circulated, and I think Sue, you mentioned there's been no actual changes.
No, you're absolutely right. I've changed the code of conduct. I haven't changed other than the date.
Yeah.
Similarly with the standing orders, it's just the date on the top, and the Treasury management strategy, just the dates within it. Again, that's all there is. So there's no changes to the actual.
Steve.
Thank you. Code.
I'm not going to stop.
We'll notice a bit later on.
So yes, assuming you're happy, I just put the new versions on the website.
Can we take items 12, 13 and 14 together? Is everyone happy to agree then? Thank you very much. Item number 15 is our annual parish meeting, which is this annual statutory meeting we have to hold, which is actually really a residents' meeting. And we can give a report to it, as can any other local organisation. And it's 24th of April. So we've sent out invitations to various schools, churches, Scouts.
I've had back a response from Scott, from Brian, with the Parkwood Nature Reserve, Autism Bedford are going to come. So I've had a few back. So we'll see.
So please do come along if you can, and invite anyone else who wants to come on as well.
Will that be going on the social media?
Yes. Yeah. Social media, please. And are there any posters out there?
Well, not yet, no. I think the boards are full of elections and our parish meeting, so it will go out on the notice board, yeah.
Thank you. So move on to item 16, which is actually really a reference to the touches on the item we talked about earlier. So it's starting 29th of May. Anything to say on that, Sue?
No. I simply sent it out, and I think we just wanted to note it. I didn't know if you were planning to attend or anything else, so
we have agreed to do that. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Item 17, to consider response to the conservation of public spaces ordered by the Borough Council. Talk to that, Sue.
well, I circulated again. It's for you to decide if you want to respond, really.
Yeah. So, Tim.
I have a very strong opinion on this item. The public space protection order. So there are two being consulted on. There's the cycling one, pedestrian areas, the town centre, and there is the one that covers restrictions on dogs, various restrictions. I'm fine with the dogs ones. The cycling one, I strongly oppose continuing that order. This is the one that enables the Borough Council to issue £75 fines on cyclists riding through the pedestrian area of the town centre, and I think that power is being overused. The number of fines being issued has greatly increased over the last couple of years, I believe, as the function has been outsourced to a third party. The impact, I mean, Peter will probably want to speak to this. The impact of that is that it discourages cyclists from visiting the town centre. And I personally know people who have been caught out because they don't know that these rules are in place, and they cycle into the pedestrian area, and then there's someone with a camera on them who will stop you, tell you that you're riding fine. You know, that it doesn't have to be particularly busy. It just has to be within the time periods, and then they will issue a fixed penalty notice of £75, and it's very steep. And there's no discount for early payment anymore. They took that away a couple of years ago. So I think it's I really it's not logical. This I recognise this is just my very strong held view. But if there's any response, we're going to make that.
Is it well signposted?
Yes.
My little boy's nearly been hit by bikes 3 or 4 times, so I'm the other way with you because he can't be as aware of bikes as other people. So he's nearly been hit a few times. So I'm not necessarily in favour of fixed penalty, but in terms of signposts signposting where cyclists can see it, I mean, is that?
Well, I'll tell you that it is signposted. The notices are sort of out of your eye line about 2 metres up.
So not sensibly signposted, is what I'm saying.
And I thought, until I realised this consultation was on, I actually went around and I looked for the signs, and I've walked past them thousands of times and just not taken them in. So people are surprised when they hear that this regulation exists, and they're being caught out.
But they won't get caught out twice, though.
So to be
I think
clear,
it's very steep fines.
So just to be clear then, Tim, it currently applies between 9 AM and 6 PM. And try and count, is that 7 days a week, or is it?
7 days a week.
7 days a week, in the town centre.
Why Saturday and Sunday?
Sorry?
Why include Saturday and Sunday?
Well, Saturday because there's a lot of shopping, people are shopping.
No, but it's not at that time, or Sunday not at that time. So they could change the time frames on Sunday.
Be even more confusing then. If you've got blank time, then
Obviously Saturday 9 to 6 is the busiest time of week for pedestrians, so that's exactly when you need it to be enforced. If you were going to enforce it, I'm not saying that, that's when.
Market days are the two main times when there's a lot of pedestrians in the centre.
Okay.
As a cycling organisation and person, we don't mind it for reckless and careless and irresponsible cyclists, but we're dead against it for the majority of cyclists who take into account pedestrians and so on. The borough did do a 32-hour video way back in 2012, and they analysed every minute of that footage, and they saw about 1,000 cyclists during that time, and there was no conflict whatsoever between pedestrians and cyclists. And when the pedestrian areas got busy, most, as you would expect, most cyclists got off and walked forward. Our main concern is we had a number of meetings with the borough and the police before this started, and we were assured that it would not be applied, particularly to elderly people who use a bicycle or tricycle in the same way that another person may use a mobility scooter. And the police had guidelines to do that before they prosecuted anybody. But this private company that they took on board for a 1-year initial contract is a very aggressive organisation. It was been quoted in the national press as one of the worst organisations there is, and they get hold of a person. I've seen an 80-year-old person on the bike being apprehended, you know, they hold onto the bike and the timid 80-year-old is almost crying as they are writing out the report and so on straight away, and finally sent £5. Last year, the Department for Transport published an inclusive transport strategy, and they said that by 2020 they would change the regulations because they were aware that a lot of elderly people do have to use a bike as a mobility aid. So we're going to change the regulations to ensure that was okay. So this ties up with what we believe and what the police believe. It's just this aggressive company. I haven't got any current figures, but certainly they started in the middle of January last year, and up till September they'd caught over 1,200 cyclists, and the net result is that overall in the town, cycling count has in fact gone down by about 5 or 6%. And based on research in other towns and cities, not only in the UK but also all around the world, cycling does have quite an economic benefit, gives an economic benefit to a town centre, much more than the cars do. So, summarising, our response is going to be, yes, continue to ban, but only for irresponsible and reckless cyclists. And you do still see, I mean, we were in the town 2 weeks ago, and there was a group of 12, 15 teenagers that were doing wheelies all the way from Mill Street down to St Paul's Square, on both carriageways. And that sort of thing, yes, you should try it, but not the ordinary person who is going doing his ordinary business. And one thing against Bedford, we had a letter from the National Cycling Organisation a few months ago to say that they've had complaints from a number of foreign cyclists, particularly from Holland and Denmark, who have been caught, and they weren't aware of these regulations, because in those two countries it's quite normal to cycle in town centres and to walk if it becomes too overcrowded.
Well, I'm both cyclist and pedestrian, but and I see both Peter and Tim's point of view. But I actually supported this ban in the centre of Bedford, mainly because, especially on Saturdays and weekdays, a lot of kids and older people. So I don't think it's a bad thing to have this ban. And it's only very, very sensitive.
But it's the older people, it concerns the older people who have to use the cycle. To put it in context, mobility scooters are much more dangerous than a person cycling. And over the last 5 years, there's been a 200% increase in mobility scooter riders injuring pedestrians.
Some people go very, very fast. Yes.
They go very fast, and some
Like
of
a go-kart.
some of them are as big as small cars.
Yeah.
Yes. So they are far more dangerous than an elderly person cycling using as a mobility aid.
Catherine, did you want to?
I was just going to say that I think the initial introduction of the purpose of this being introduced was good in terms of being able to stop the road cyclists. But what has happened with it is the implementation of it has made it into a money-making thing, because my office is just on near Clark's, and I've seen the people who've been fined, and they're fined, you know, as you're cycling from Marks and Spencer's going out, and they're not going to hit anybody, they're quite sensible cyclists, yet they're being fined in that corner, and there are people who are being sensible. The use of the powers are not being sensible. It's just an override, you know, just because you're on a bike. But there was a lot of quite elderly people I've seen getting caught out in that corner. And also some young people. Not all young people are going to be doing wheelies down the high street. You know, recently my daughter's bike was nicked, but, you know, she wasn't doing wheelies down the high street. But they're the kind of young people who use the bike to get into town, and because the bus is £4.50 to get into town from Brickhill, so it's quite expensive, and that's a cheaper mode of transport for young people. So we're already penalising them, and then we're going to charge them £75 for being safe and cycling safe. What we're saying,
I'm just saying, then get off the bike and walk it when you hit a pedestrian area.
no, but if it's safe, then when you do the bikeability, it's about safety. If it's safe and they're not going to hit anybody, there's no reason why they can't cycle and then park it and chain it up. It's not like they're going to be cycling when there's people.
I know, it's just difficult for someone on the ground to then interpret what they consider safe and what they consider
No, but then
dangerous,
like,
and then how do you interpret that, and then there's more challenges. So I can see the benefits of a blanket ban where they have to walk the thing, because it becomes open to interpretation. So there's a lot of sides to it. I think it's very aggressive, and I think the litter is just aggressive.
Well, I like
the litter
the
fines
litter
I like it, they're very aggressive as well.
Can I suggest that, in fact, as a parish council, perhaps you don't respond as a parish council, because I think there's a mix of views here, and I don't think you're going to find ones that, and that people can respond. It's a public consultation, therefore it would be quite right that people can respond publicly, because I think you'll find that there's probably a split of opinion here, and as a parish council, I'm not sure really that this is something that you should, as parish council, necessarily comment on, because really it's a public one for individuals as such.
I would say we would definitely have to comment if it was relating to Brickhill, but we are discussing town centre.
Yeah.
Does relate to Brickhill, because it's Brickhill residents will be affected in terms of the ones that use the bikes into town.
Okay.
Well, other aspects we can agree on, like the fine being too much.
So I'm looking at the, sorry Chris, just one moment. Yeah. I'm looking at the actual questionnaire that's on the website, and it's asking things like, have you witnessed any on cycling in the town centre between 9 and 6 in the last 12 months? Yes, no, don't know. To what extent do you support or oppose, strongly support through to strongly oppose, and don't know, no opinion, and then any comments on it? So it's quite simplistic in that respect.
Well, it is, but I don't think you can answer it as a group, because they are very, have you seen, you can't say as a group, yes, chances are you will have seen amongst 10 people or 12 people something going on. You know?
I'm very glad just to have discussed it, because it's quite cathartic to actually tell us about it.
So take Sue's advice. I mean, just to trying to throw a couple of comments, looking at the map, it was obviously the town, sorry, if you want to comment.
No, I was just going to say, it's always been enforced as far as I know, even before the council did, because the police used to enforce it.
Right.
So
But they weren't very,
enforced
maybe
it.
they didn't, that wasn't their top priority.
Oh no.
And obviously when the Borough Council officers were due to enforce it, they didn't, again, do a very thorough job, so that's why it got outsourced.
The fine was a lot smaller as well.
Yeah. But the only, just to throw in a couple of comments here, if I may, looking at the map, the area that's affected by the zone, now I know a lot of people cycle to the railway station to get the train, and I think anything that allows people to get to the station safely is a good thing. So that means they can get through the town centre rather than go along Goldington Road and Bromham Road. Now obviously most commuters probably do go before 9, so they'll be able to get through the centre without being affected by that.
You see, Castle Road, Collinton Road, people, they go through the town centre.
Yeah. I do wonder whether it could be the cut-off at 6 p.m. could be brought forward a bit to sort of, 5:30 or something like that. And I wonder if they could reintroduce the cheaper, quick payment, rather than just a flat fee. And I wonder whether the signage could be improved. So anyway, so food for thought. Are we happy to? Sorry,
Chair, do you want to finish this bit up and then we'll look at the second aspect?
Yeah. So are we happy then? We mulled it over. Sue suggested that we will just individually respond with our different perspectives.
I think that probably is the sensible way forward, really.
So I think that works for the cycle fines.
Not the dogs.
The dog control orders, you'll recall we are in a holding pattern with the Borough Council for the centre spine of Woodlands Park, the Angelique Court down to West Road Way, for consideration of dogs on leads after the unfortunate incident with the lady whose cat was mauled and received. So I think it might be appropriate in situations like that where it does affect the pack to maybe comment on that aspect.
Yeah, so again, looking at the questions, have you witnessed any poor dog control behaviour, dogs fouling, dogs running loose and causing use to others, dogs inside children's play areas in the last 12 months? And then again, how trying to support it through how trying to do the process. So, and then general comments. That's what they asked me to submit.
So would it not be appropriate then to not answer the specific questions and add our comments under general comments? And just note that we're waiting.
I believe there's also an email address, you could just send a free-form response.
Yeah, there is a box you can put lots of comments in as well, so whichever way you like. But I mean, generally, I would suggest we should support the dog control, this public spaces protection order for dog fouling, or for dogs. Yeah, as a general sort of comment. Anyone else got any thoughts on this? Dog fouling is an issue, it does affect our play areas.
I think as a parish councillor you can say that, can't you? But I think then on individual things it might be worth, if you see this or got an issue, then raise that as well separately, can't you?
So are we happy to submit a
But you know add on top of that,
individually.
Yeah.
Are we happy to put in a submission and say this parish council support these dog orders, dog control orders, and we should see them continue. Do you want to note about the outstanding matter in Ashmead Road?
Yes, we have a list as well.
Right. Okay, everyone, is that it? Everyone happy with that? Thank you. Item 18 to review the list of outstanding matters.
I don't think there is anything. I don't think the only obvious one is gathering green competitions. I know that the committee still hasn't met yet, and therefore there's a likelihood that it's not going to meet.
I'm afraid we're in a bit of a busy period just now.
Yes, and therefore before you look round, July or whatever is here, will be upon us.
Yeah, see what we can do.
Well, you can look at me and see what we can do, but I'm not part of that group. You need to look at Lynn over there.
We can invite you.
And I'm competitioned out. But it's really down to Wendy and the group, I think, to try. But view was it was too late.
Okay.
For this year. So we're not having a cake baking competition.
Oh.
And I realised you wanted to be chief taster.
I know, I thought I'm just going to volunteer all day.
The only other comment I was going to say is it's the spring tea tomorrow. We've got about 65 people signed up.
Very good.
So that should be okay.
And so other things then, the children's activities.
Well, yes, we had a grand total of 3 people signed up to do the YMCA day from Brickhill. So YMCA have opened it up to wider number. We've got about 30 people signed up for football for 7 boys, girls, signed up for the 7 to 12-year-old session, and about 3 signed up for the 13 to 16-year-old session. I put it back out on social media. I did contact the schools. In the past, we used to do flyers to go out in the school bags, but the problem we've got now is we have too many children, because if you're covering an age range from 5 to 12 and from 7 to 16, the idea of printing a flyer for every child in every school, it will cost almost more than it would be to spend to put events on. I don't know what the answer is really, because I haven't booked anything yet for the summer, because it does really worry me that we're struggling to get numbers. Every household in Brickhill had it on the front page of the news, so that was, as far as I can see, a good way of getting to the target audience. So I'm not sure what the answer is really. I thought the YMCA one would have been popular, but I thought it was good value. £10 effectively for a day, and that was half cost of the event anyway, about less than half. So hopefully YMCA have got 30 children signed up.
Have they got extra kids for outside?
Well, I can't tell because it's the booking's through a link. Yeah. So I will contact them again next week and see what they have found. But it's very difficult.
Again,
sorry, Catherine.
I know that we do quite a lot of the publicity for this, but maybe when we book somebody like YMCA, should we not include maybe tester days that they can go around the schools and run tester sessions for kids to say this is what you would get, so that they would then use that as part of publicity?
I mean, you're right, but really, in many ways, the target audience are the parents, aren't they, with the younger ones? Because it's generally the parents who say, well, what are we going to do with the children in the holidays? Whereas the children are often happy to do whatever the parents suggest, providing they're doing something.
But tester power works, because if my daughter comes home and goes, I want to do this, but sometimes in the end they're just like, okay, we're going to go do that. Sometimes, you know, it works.
The challenge is,
doesn't it? You've been to the bouncing place, I think.
The challenge is, if you ask them to go around the schools, that's going to incur extra cost.
Yeah, for us, because what we're trying to do is provide a service, and as part of that service we need to advertise. Are we not better off to put in more to get the young people aware, rather than not and maybe incurring a cancellation fee, which way, I don't know, it's a thought.
Okay.
Chris, do we feel that the reach of our advertising is enough? Do we need to look at something like one of the local publications with greater reach, and spend a bit of the money on paid adverts?
I think the problem was, in some ways, we were always a bit concerned that if you go too wide, you get too many people. It sounds ridiculous, but we only had spaces for 20 children on each of the MK Dons sessions and 30 on the YMCA. That doesn't sound like many places to fill, quite honestly. When you think of the size of Brickhill, you think you've approached all the schools, you think 30 in an age range of 5 to 12 would easily be filled.
We've approached schools. Every house in Brickhill has had something through the door with it on. lead a horse to water.
Well, as I say, Brickhill, the schools have said, give us flyers, we can send them out. But I thought, well, we're going to be producing one heck of a lot of flyers to cover 5-year-olds up to 16-year-olds. And in fact, double in some cases, got 2 different events. I don't know, what we'll probably find is Thursday we'll get a whole set of parents saying, oh, when is this going on? I've never seen anything about it. And you think, well, it's a bit late now, it was on Monday, or Wednesday, or I don't know, it's very difficult. We've always struggled, all the time I've been here, but it seems to have gradually got harder and harder. And we have thought something in the past, well, if it was free, but then we still have to get people to sign up because we need the paperwork, obviously, so that we're running it safely.
We do events at my friend's children's bookshop, and if you make an event free, people say they're coming but no one's
Well, that's the trouble we've got as well.
She's now charging £2 for an event with £2 off.
Sadly, I've got that
to get
problem with the
force people to
spring tea. I think I've got the same Derek 10 times by 10 different people, possibly. Because you'll get someone say, oh, Derek, I don't know what his name is, wants to come, and then you seem to think, I seem to be quite a few Dereks here. Are they all the same Derek? But nobody knows Derek's surname, so we don't know whether, or Pam or whoever, you know.
I just think the older age groups are not going to be interested in something like that. They're just, if you could organise an Xbox tournament, it'd be full up. They're just not interested in doing anything.
There's other things. So I guess let's get through this current one and then we can talk about the summer. I mean, some years ago, the police had a skateboard ramp thing, which was mobile, and that was a way to create one year. And that was very popular, but essentially just put it there and let people get on with it. Now, I don't know how the risk assessment works.
No, that's what slightly worried me, because we'd have to have, well, I suspect you'd have to supervise it, but then you can't do that. What as a parish council?
I used to be in the community safety forum around the skate park days, and they used to go around all the villages in Central Bed. You don't even have to supervise it.
As I said, skate parks in Bedford now, they're not.
No, but this is a mobile one.
Yeah, no, you don't.
That's just slightly worried me if somebody or in a coach.
So in the few days between now and events,
well, it's Monday.
Monday. Spread the word.
Is it worth putting I mean, don't really stupid, but a Facebook ad out? Everyone's on social media.
I shared the We Are Bedford, and that's got 50,000.
I've done it. I've also gone to Brickhill Wanderers. I've gone to the football clubs and said. I've also gone to Mark Rutherford, and they will send it out to all the age group that are on their text, whatever messaging or whatever they do. I think it's just that we really cannot get people to commit to things at the moment. It's only £4. It's not like it's a lot of money.
I mean, obviously Premier Sports do similar on a daily basis throughout the holidays.
And they charge a heck of a lot.
Oh yeah, I know. But what I'm saying is, if the kids are committed to doing that, then obviously they can't do it as well.
Well, that's why we have to question whether you do it, don't you? It's very difficult. Don't know. We need to think about the summer one, but we did last year try the Box End Park. That was a nightmare to try and get the number of children on it, even though it's good value.
Bedford Town would most probably be interested in doing it.
Well, they've never come back and said anything.
What did you email?
I think you were going to talk to someone.
Yeah, I spoke to them.
And they've never come to us.
Well, I haven't told them to, because I didn't know. I've just asked the question whether they'd be interested in doing it.
And were they interested?
Yeah, certainly they're getting into gear with an academy thing and all that lot. So, and they're actually doing an Easter course as well, actually at Bedford Town. So, you know, there's possibilities for the summer.
Yeah, I mean, if they're interested in running it, by all means come to us and we can sort of do something.
Okay.
Which is how we got with MK Dons. They came to us and said.
Right, so shall we move on then?
Okay, so that's it really.
Yep. Thanks, Sue. So, the next meeting is the 8th of May. That's the next formal meeting of the Parish Council. As mentioned before, we have got the annual parish meeting on the 24th of April, so please do come on to that if you can. But this is the last official Parish Council meeting before the end of our 4-year term. And I just want to say thank you very much to Maurice, Lynn and James who are standing down. And congratulations actually to those people who've been re-elected. So to that's Charlie, Wendy, Vince, Chris and Mick have been elected unopposed. And commiserations to, oh sorry, and apologies, and Catherine as well. Catherine and Wendy have been re-elected unopposed. And Anne, I'll get my mental list in order. And then commiserations to those of us who are fighting election in Brickhill East Ward. So Tim, Peter, myself, Sudesh, Rani, and Stuart Green. Yeah, so there's 5 people who've been nominated for 4 places in Brickhill East Ward. So that was really exciting. And also, of course, good luck to the Borough Council candidates in the elections in Brickhill. So, and with that, I'd like to say, thanks for those for standing down, and declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much. Okay, that's it.